You know, we were like, what's down there? And he goes, oh, that's where they keep the UFOs.
These billion-dollar company founders, these celebrities are real people that have their own challenges, their own struggles, their own learnings, and it is possible.
What's up, fam? This is DEVGRU. Welcome to my home in San Francisco. As you know, I've moved down to Miami, Florida for the last couple of years, but it's always great to be back home in California, in San Francisco, really the heart of innovation, tech, and AI. Obviously, a lot of struggle post-pandemic with the city, but I'm really optimistic to see what's being built here today. Let's go.
You know, when we first met, I remember we were walking down the Embarcadero over there, and we were talking about, you know, how you wanted to change the entire nutritional model kind of thing, you know, with the fourth macronutrient. I thought that was inspiring, to say the least.
You served 30 years for our country in the Navy, and I think that most people don't do 10 years, let alone like 30 years in anything.
You know, I come out of Princeton and Ivy League world, and I go into the SEAL training, and that was, you know, to put it mildly, an enormous transition. It was a transition from one way of using your mind and body to another way, you know, completely different way. And then there's like I'll call it an apprenticeship in the SEAL teams, followed by a journeyman. And that, I think that takes like your first 12 to 15 years. And then the last 15 years was kind of like mastery of various dimensions of, I'll call it SEALness. But also right at that 15-year point was 9/11, and the reality of what I was doing every day changed.
When you were serving the country, you were dealing with sending your men into battle, and I'm sure people were getting injured, wounded, presumably some were killed in action. And that stakes just seems so much more real than no one's dying in business. No one's trying to kill me in business. There might be like aggressive competition in terms of capturing products or markets, but I think the stakes of life or death versus money and like a company's life or death, I think gave me a lot of perspective and therefore confidence that like the stakes in business were actually not that steep in terms of other games.
You know, decisions are decisions, and the stakes are important to the people going through it at the time. My father always used to tell me, he goes, you know, Alex, you deal with people's lives and people care about their lives, but I deal with other people's money, and you know, they care about their money a lot more. And I always thought my father was joking, but there's a lot more truth to what my father, you know, told me than, you know, one would hope.
I think a lot of young entrepreneurs want so badly to achieve something that you compromise your principles or your own self-worth to get something done. Whether that's like working with people that you don't trust, but you feel like you need to work with them to get what they have so you can build your business or your empire. And I think realizing that shortcuts on partnerships and people, it's just like one of the most painful mistakes. It's like hiring the wrong person or building a business with the wrong co-founder. I think the people mistakes end up being the most expensive and painful mistakes.
General Krulak once gave this amazing talk about the concept of integrity and how it started with the Roman legions and then the Praetorian Guard in the Roman Empire as opposed to Republic. And it's all the stuff you kind of talked about, you know, integrity and being at the center of everything. And you know, it means a lot when you're building a military unit. It means a lot when you're building a business. The lessons for business in the military and for the military and business seem to exist at one level below the, you know, the existential ones. In business, you're talking about, you know, product and your company's success, whereas in warfare, you're talking about life or death or the existence of the nation or the tribe kind of thing. But I do think there's a lot of carryover and figuring out how to have that effective exchange of information.
Now we're on our way to visit my buddy Dimitri. He's a Stanford buddy of mine, and we kind of grew up together in the entrepreneurship scene. And he's now the founder CEO of a company called Modern Treasury, last valued at over $2 billion. Let's learn. Thanks for hosting us at your office. I feel like out of all of my entrepreneurial friends, so many of us left the city or went just fully remote, but this is a beautiful office in Union Square, San Francisco. Like, how has it been building through and having an office in San Francisco through the pandemic, which I think, I mean, not news, not a surprise. I mean, it's been tough for the city.
We were 13 people, I think, when COVID hit, and we started hiring more remotely, of course. It was kind of hard to ask people, like, you know, where they were even based when they're kind of moving around, being nomadic. So by the time that we kind of got this office, which was September of 21, we were about 75 people. And many of those were not in San Francisco, but the core still very much was. My co-founders and I were always in SF, and you know we've grown past that since since September 21 when we got this office. We opened an office in New York as well, and then San Francisco has always kind of been the place to build, I think, really ambitious things, and so it kind of felt like that was never really a question for us.
What's the top line? I know it's like last private valuation over 2 billion. How many employees? What are like the things to show off?
Yeah, so we're building the operating system for money movement. So we were helping companies that were in the flow of funds, kind of like managing some sort of like marketplace or lending product or payroll, things like that, where the product they were building actually moves money. And that integration to the banking world and connecting to the US banking system is not trivial. About 160 people today. As I mentioned, we have an office in SF in New York. We have some people remote. But it's been a fun 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, going from pre-pandemic, I mean, we still all remember that. I mean, 17 people to you 10x essentially from a headcount perspective.
By the way, and you know, the pandemic was obviously a very big and important event in the life of modern treasury. Like it wasn't any other company was trying to grow through it. But you know, the private markets, you know, went kind of crazy for a while. Then bank failures started happening this year. There's very little predictive power to what the next 12 months holds. Yeah. And if you're trying to solve for the past 12 months, you're always kind of like not solving for the right thing. It's always going to be something else that I think has been one of my takeaways for the past few years. Is like every time you get into the next cycle, it's just like a new and different thing.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it feel different is when you have customers who are using your product and giving you very direct feedback. Like when you don't have that, that sucks. So like a lot of companies, a lot of founders go through cycles when like nobody's using their product. Yeah. And you kind of have to get through that, and you know sometimes you have to pivot. But when you do have that, then you kind of go back to like that's the thing that matters ultimately. It's kind of like the YC tagline of make something people want. Like once you have people that want it, then you have to go back and kind of like really make it. Like, you know, you make something that people are kind of engaging with, and then, but like when they're really relying, and for us, I think the reliability is a really important piece, right? Like the nature of the product is such that it has to work, like period. That's something that we think about a lot, especially as we scale and add more complexity.
I think something that I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs like don't fully understand is that I think you and your founding team were subject matter experts who have been building in the area of money transfer for a long time. I mean, I'm curious to hear your perspective, but from my outside lens looking in, you were, you know, your core team was one of the core teams at our friend Matt Humphrey's company, Lending Home, doing similar things, right? Like figuring how to move money around. So it wasn't like you woke up one day, hey, I want to start a $1 billion company. It was like, we've been solving this problem in this specific context. Can we abstract this out into a platform? I mean, can you talk through that?
Yeah, we saw a very specific use case. And I think that a lot of times when people come up with ideas, like that's a very common way of doing it. We had a very specific problem in a mortgage context, but it was actually a pretty general problem that a lot of companies had. And so we were building this mortgage marketplace, and we had to disperse loans and collect payments and kind of cut them all up and put them in the right place and disperse them to investors. And that chaos of moving money around in that way was something that was very painful, and was something that we had to go build an internal team and had to go build internal expertise for like how does ACH work? How do wires work? What happens when ACHs fail? When we started talking to other companies, they all had the same problem, and they all would say, oh, like, and in some cases, like very large companies that we all know, they would say, oh, you should totally meet our payments engineering team. Here they are, it's 120 people, and they are really focused and working on building all this stuff that you just mentioned. And we would come back and say like, we just want that. Like they've already built that, like, but every company had to build it on its own. So I think that a lot of infrastructure products come from that sort of experience. And it's something that, I don't know, like right place, right time, or just kind of like attention span or whatever it is, like we kind of found it interesting in a weird, nerdy way. And so to your point, like, yeah, we've definitely, I don't know if we were, but we definitely became, you know, I think subject matter experts over time as we started kind of building that out.
I mean, that's what I look for now when I put my venture capital hat on. It's just like, again, I feel like a lot of people want to be this tech founder, but don't have enough subject matter experience to even like know what problem to solve. And I think it sometimes is beneficial to your point. Like you were building this in a very specific context and realizing that, hey, all these big companies had like 120 person staffs doing variations of what I'm doing. Right. Maybe there's an opportunity here. So I think it's like, you know, the takeaway that I get from your story is you have to have a reason why you're an expert in a space. And I think a lot of people want to skip it. They want to like skip the grinding in a weird sector for a while and just be like, I want to be CEO.
Yeah, it's like why you and why now, basically, right? And I think particularly now, there's been all this talk about like, you know, obviously AI products. It's like, at the end of the day, is somebody hiring for a job that actually your product can do, or, you know, maybe not all of it, maybe like 30%, maybe 50, maybe 70%. But it's one of those things that I think like you have to be able to define, and it's not going to be interesting. It's going to be like a job, right? Like it's going to be kind of boring in the same way that a lot of jobs are, but like that's valuable. Like if your product can do it. So anyway, I think that it's almost like nobody's going to be a subject matter expert in something that is hyped up and is like the most interesting thing. Maybe that occasionally happens, but that's kind of like a brief moment in time and then it passes anyway.
I know that really resonates with me because I feel like when I think about business, its first principle is like you have to do something that is useful to other people so they give you money. Like that is like by definition what a business is. Right. And oftentimes a lot of jobs, a lot of processes aren't super sexy. Like building a business is not like the investor dinner, the closing dinner, like the travel, whatever, business class. It's like do something that is useful for someone else so they give you some money for it. Hope you guys enjoyed hanging out with me today in San Francisco. So fun to hang out with Alex, such a mentor, a good human being. I think if there's a definition of a mensch, Alex is that type of person. And then Dimitri, what a legend. It really got me thinking and focused on building real value for real people. Don't get caught up on the hype of building a technology business for technology's sake. Build something that provides value to other people. That's what it takes to build a real durable business. I'm inspired by San Francisco City. This is where my roots are in terms of being a tech entrepreneur, a tech venture capitalist. So I can just imagine I'm gonna have a lot more content in San Francisco. I wanna bring you through my community in SF. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.